Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Haresh Khoobchandani, Vice President of Sales Asia Pacific Autodesk.
Thank you. Good morning, India. All right, I love being back here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is my 90th, slightly above my 90th day at Autodesk. I joined Autodesk 3 months ago. This is my first public keynote as an Autodesk member, and I'm so proud and incredibly privileged to be here in India to share with you a little bit about our view of the future and the future of making specifically. I want to welcome this diverse audience that we have. We've got people from academia, we've got our customers, partners, and we've got a whole slew of different people, different professionals who are here with us today. I want to welcome the kids from the Delhi Public School. You guys can wave there. There you go. They came in fully dressed up and decked up in their Delhi Public School uniforms. Really proud, very proud to see you guys here today representing Delhi. This is the first time we're doing it in Delhi, which is pretty cool for me. I've not spent a lot of time here, but I've spent a lot of time in India in general. Now, I grew up in Singapore, a country that in about 50-odd years has had massive disruption and massive amounts of enablement of technology that has driven fundamental disruption and changing lives globally for us. It's become part of the everyday fabric of how we live. And when you think about what's happening from a technology standpoint, the future that we're going to go into is going to be a very different world. It's going to be different, but it's going to be a very exciting world, a world where it's going to present brand new opportunities, a world that's going to challenge how we think and how we do things today in order for us to do things differently, because there are many demands, many pressures, and many challenges ahead of us. But more than anything else, there's an incredible amount of opportunity that I'm incredibly excited about. And when you think about the world we live in today, we live in a world of a population of about 7.5 billion people. That's a lot of people consuming technology in their everyday lives. That's not going to change. That's going to continue to grow. And it's going to continue to grow, and by 2050, it's stated to be about 10 billion people who are going to be part of this planet. 10 billion people driven primarily by the middle class. The middle class is growing faster than any time in our history. And if you think about it, about 1990, less than a quarter of the world's population qualified to be in this category called the middle class. Today, almost half of us all do. That's staggering. When you think about it, that's 3 times as many more people whose lives have become better. And that's just the start. And we're only just beginning. And what's even more exciting, 400,000 people are joining the middle class each and every single day. And you can imagine the same trend happening in India, because one of the fastest growing middle class in the world is in India as well. So when you think about it, along with this growing population will come growing demand of all sorts of things. And when you think about things that you and I use every day and probably take for granted, right? Things like phones, things like motorized transportation, things like food or abundant food, and also not forgetting things like housing. It's very obvious. And you know what? The demand of housing will continue to grow, because 68% of the population will live in cities by 2050. Imagine the implications of that. And one of the biggest implications of that is the fact that we'll need to exponentially build more buildings than we are today. That number, depending on which statistic and research you take, ranges from anything from 3,000 to 5,000 more buildings that we need to build just to fulfill the demand that's coming ahead of us. That's a massive, massive opportunity, at the same time challenge. But it's not just the buildings. What we spend on these buildings is nothing compared to what we need to spend and invest in new infrastructure. Not just new infrastructure, because as we build the new, we also need to make sure that we repair our existing crumbling infrastructure. So as we're building the new, we also need to look after and rebuild the old on an ongoing basis. A massive opportunity, but challenge as well. And when you think about it, from highways to hospitals, education and energy, wheat and water, 10 billion people will want the same thing that we all want today and we all have access today. So when you look at it, the reality of more is real. More is inevitable. The demand for more is driven by demographic changes that are underway today, right in front of our very eyes, and something we cannot at all ignore. But to meet this increasing demand, what does it mean? What does it mean for all of us? We're increasingly relying on automation. India is no exception as well when you think about the rate of growth the country is generating, and is forecasted to continue to be one of the fastest growing countries in the world. Today, India is the 6th largest economy in the world by dollar terms, overtaking France and continuing to grow. Incredibly proud when you think about the heritage of India. So to meet more demand is increasingly dependent on automation. But more demand doesn't mean more jobs. It doesn't mean more equality as well. And as we make more things for more people, we also have one challenge that we need to start dealing with. The challenge of negative impact. Negative impact, which is often an unintended consequence. We don't go out building things on purpose to have negative impact, but it's often an unintended consequence of the things we make. It's also, the more we make, the less of our limited natural resources that we leave for ourselves, we leave for the future. So increasingly important for us to think about our planet. But it's not just about natural resources, it's also about the skills. Less skilled labor that's left to go around as we build more, as we cope with increasing demand. But that's not it. Particularly in industries like construction and manufacturing, where there's already less skilled workers than we need, it becomes a little bit more exacerbated. So how we build all we need and balance this with less negative impact and less negative impact not just to people, but less disruption to businesses, to communities, and less creation of inequality is something that we all must make it an imperative for ourselves. And not just that, but it's also less negative impact on our planet. We all need to start taking our planet seriously and looking after it as we think about embracing the future opportunities ahead of us. So less depletion of our natural resources, less waste, and less carbon emissions. So as we think about the inevitability of more, and we plan for the inevitability of more, because it's going to happen, we also need to balance this with the reality of less. And this is going to be a modern day imperative that all of us must embrace, regardless of the country you come from. In order to solve this fundamental capacity issue, we're going to have to fundamentally rethink the way we make things. Continuing to do things in the same way will not help us create a better future. We can't continue to do things the way we're doing today, especially when you think about construction that creates almost a third of global waste. Think about it, a third of global waste is coming from construction. And when you think about even our country in India and globally, construction will continue to grow. It's important for us to think of new ways to save this. Not only that, 70% of spare parts that we make today aren't even needed. This is statistically proven. We're losing efficiencies of manufacturing within our inefficient supply chains. And this is something that we need to start thinking about seriously. It's a huge opportunity. So as a result, what's happening? We're wasting warehousing space, we're wasting materials, and we're actually wasting money. So if we want to reduce our negative impact on the planet and the people, it's a reality that we all need to face up to by rethinking how we think about making. So addressing the inevitability of more, along with the reality of less, is a massive, massive design opportunity, or rather challenge. Solving this capacity issue is a massive design opportunity that we've ever had and is in front of us. But more importantly, it's also changing what we work on. It's not just about doing things for the sake of doing, it's also giving us opportunities to think about what we can actually tackle. And I'll cover that in my keynote in the coming slides. It's also changing what we make. So rather than focus on automation taking our jobs away, which is where a lot of the commentary and dialogue has been, maybe we should focus on the opportunity of where we can take automation, where we can go together, because we own our destiny. We have the ability to turn around and go to somewhere together with automation to create an incredible future together. So because along with the inevitability of more and the reality of less is, my friends, the opportunity of better. Let's explore that a little bit more. And what do I mean? So what does it mean to make better things? What does it exactly mean? things that are better suited to the user, to human need. So when you think about off-the-shelf things today, it no longer fits our needs and our desires. Increasingly, all of us have particular preferences. Increasingly, you see mass production shifting and giving way to mass customization. Digital now becomes very integrated into so much of the physical, because the things that are around us today, things that we use, whether you're thinking about IoT scenarios or things in the office or even within the fabric of your own personal lives, has sensors, has software, has microprocessors, and has media. They're more connected and they're more configurable. And as a result, there's an opportunity to actually start to create things that are more meaningful. Now, what about how we make things? We talked about making more meaningful things, but how do we make things? What role can automation play in making them better? A proliferation of new advanced manufacturing capabilities is actually changing what we can make. And we'll share some examples with you in the course of the next couple of slides. The things we make no longer are constrained by the physical process of making, which historically has been a showstopper for us. That's changing. Robots are no longer constrained to the factory. In fact, there's a company in India that has starting to build robots using our technology and has got global presence already. Incredible progress, incredible innovation coming out of this country. It's also moving from production line to the construction site. And we're seeing more and more of that happening as it starts to augment human capability, not necessarily just replace human capability. 3D printing is no longer constrained to prototyping. It started that way, more and more now in aerospace and automotive. You start to see additive manufacturing increasingly become production proven. I've got a live example and I'm going to show you that in a bit. We are capable of making increasingly more complex and higher fidelity things. So there's an opportunity to make things of increasing value, things that perform better, are better suited, and they last longer. What about the work we do? This is one of the biggest questions I get on an ongoing basis about the future of work. The future of work is more than just our environment and collaborative spaces and open. The future of work is changing, and our point of view may differ slightly from the rest. The things we make, if you think about it, are increasingly connected. So are our industries and our supply chains. You think about the things that we make are also more configurable. So are our methods of production as a result. So we are less constrained by the physical process of making, and so too as a result is our work. So when you think about the future, the way we design and make things across all industries are starting to converge. But as they converge, so too are the challenges we face in all our projects. And the capabilities as a result we need start to evolve. And we're thinking about that in the future as well as we change, and we'll share that with you in a bit. So automation is giving us the opportunity to create things that are more meaningful. And now we have the opportunity to use automation as a result to create more meaningful work. So automation is our friend. It has to be something that we partner and embrace to actually create a more meaningful future. So because this automation is changing how we work, it's also changing what we can work on. Whether it's commercial in nature, whether it's partnering with NGOs, it's also changing what we can work on. So it's changing the things we are capable of making, helping us make better things. So if you think about this, what does making better things actually look like? Let's go through some nice customer examples to kind of illustrate the point a little better and hopefully give you some clarity of what's happening globally with some of our customers. So General Motors, I'm assuming everyone's heard of General Motors, right? So General Motors, big car company, they've got a massive heritage, more than 100 years. And for the work that they've done on the assembly line, historically, they've used technology as a way to optimize their production, right? But when you live in a world that we're living now where things are changing really fast, you can't just turn around and think about optimization as a strategy when you use technology. So they've historically basically used technology to focus on optimizing the assembly line. The assembly line churns out about a car a minute. Now, think about it, a car a minute. Now, each car has got about 30,000 parts. So a car a minute, 30,000 parts, massive automation optimizing production. But that's not enough, and they know it. And they know it because there's a rapidly changing auto industry that they need to stay competitive and they need to push the boundaries, and they need to start thinking about how they innovate. And this is where CEO of GM, Mary Barra, has started to turn around and reinvent GM with a focus around electric. So she's got a stated objective publicly that says she's going to introduce 20 electric cars by the year 2023. And that means improving efficiency. And the best way to improve efficiency is to reduce complexity and reduce weight. Reduce complexity and reduce weight. A massive challenge in a highly efficient supply chain that they have. So what did they do? So GM basically partnered with Autodesk to use a piece of technology called Generative Design. And Generative Design essentially help reduce the number of parts that they basically go into each car. So our Generative Design tool allows GM engineers to develop solutions that are based on the goals and constraints of a part. So for example, like where it connects to others, what it's made of, what its load that it needs to take. And GM worked with us to explore a prototype for this part. Basically what you've just seen, which is the rear bracket, or the bracket into which the rear seat belts fit into. So what happened after that? So what did the technology do? So the technology basically, having defined the goals and the constraints, Generative Design is a piece of technology, automatically generated viable design options for GM to choose, taking into account performance and manufacturing capability. So what's cool about this is not just a fancy design, it's taking design and manufacturing capability and the viability of that into consideration as well. Speaking to a customer yesterday in India, one of your largest customers in India, they love this, and it would really blew their mind with regards to how now design and manufacturing capability potentially are converging. So this meant that GM engineers were able to explore dozens and dozens of valid options faster than they were previously able to do for a single design, lowering costs, including efficiency and productivity. From all the options available, the engineers decided upon was this one, the one you see in this slide. So what's so great about this? So it's a solution that was created that would have been impossible for a human to design alone. Yet, a human did design this, but in partnership with automation in a really profound way. And a solution that GM designed to be 40% lighter and 20% stronger than the original, which is in line with their stated goal. This was the picture of the original part. Now, this new part, what's cool about this? It's now printed as a single part rather than assembled from 8 separate components. This is a real example of automation and the power of how generative design is helping a company like GM reinvent. So automation through generative design is enabling GM now to make parts that are more lightweight and more fuel efficient, allowing them to be on strategy. But less components also means less complexity and less suppliers. The impact is far greater than just about lighter parts and more efficient parts. It's changing the parts that GM makes, it's changing their vehicles, their supply chain, and quite frankly, the entire ecosystem. So when you think about GM's focus on innovation, help them create a better bracket. But it's just one component. Imagine how much further automation could take a company like GM. How much further all its cars could go. How much further fuel that could be saved potentially for the company as it starts to roll out the new electric cars. So GM applied generative design to tens of thousands of parts that make up every one of its cars, and it's something that they're starting to embark on right now. So GM's got an incredible future when you think about how they're thinking about moving from optimizing production to innovating as a motor company. So let's turn things to something that we build. We talked a little bit about GM and the design and how they manufacture that with additive manufacturing. One of the questions that got asked as I came on board and I started to learn about this business was, how could we make better homes as a result, be a better business model in construction? It was a really interesting question that I was trying to put my head around. And that's the very question that one of our customers has been asking themselves, all right? And this was a customer in Netherlands. So this is a story about Wen Vilnen. It's a family business in the Netherlands. They make property, lots of it, all right? But what's cool also is they don't just make property, they also make affordable net zero energy housing. Now, when you think about net zero energy housing and property and profitability, it's kind of like a paradox. But they're building housing both affordable and sustainable. But despite the fact that it sounds like a paradox, they were able to turn around and achieve that, right? But that's not like what most construction companies do or have done. And this is the pretty cool thing about this, and this is where they've partnered with us to use our set of technologies. So basically, they fully adopted BIM, and they figured out how they could eliminate waste and lower cost. It enabled them to develop a modular concept for housing that could be used in many different configurations. So very, very cool stuff. And having invested in building this catalog of component parts, they used manufacturing processes to build these components better. And what they did was they prefab each component themselves, first on-site at their own factory, and then brought them on-site at any job site that allowed them to then hook it up. Soon, all of their houses could be assembled in 3 days. Very, very cool stuff. But not only that, they just didn't look, so BIM helped them rethink how they lower costs, get more efficient. They also wanted to disrupt themselves by changing or rethinking how they design stuff. So what did they do? They used our generative design technology. So we helped them use generative design technology on a product to explore 15,000 different options. Without automation, it's going to be very hard to go that wide and that broad with regards to how they explore these different options. They focus on the 3 most interesting choices that they could shape into the perfect urban neighborhood. Not just turning around and taking into consideration profit, but also taking into consideration human needs. So generative design helped them look across multiple dimensions all at one go. So what did they achieve? They were able to maximize the amount of solar energy they could collect. Generative design helped Wendell meet their net zero energy goals, something that was a big priority for them. Not only this, it helped them optimize backyard size and views, ensuring that the housing met the human needs of its occupants too. So cost and profit, like I said just now, were part of the model. After all, they are a commercial organization. They're not just doing it for love and fresh air, right? So Van Wielen's modular system allows them to make buildings better, less waste, less risk, while generative design enables them to make better buildings with more yard space and more daylight to better meet the needs of their occupants. So if automation can help make things better suited to human needs, imagine what they could actually do for humans that are in real need. And let me share with you a little piece of work that we did with an NGO. So imagine what we could do for the millions of Colombians who live along one of the world's most active fault lines. This is a really, really devastating picture. Many of Colombia's dense urban areas, if you didn't know, are very vulnerable to collapse in the event of an earthquake. And when that happens, rebuilding, the lives of people are dependent on how fast they can actually get buildings up so that they can carry on with lives and they can rebuild their lives. And this is where we partnered with an NGO called Build Change to automate how they survey and redesign those buildings that need retrofitting. And so that they can do it faster and much faster. And when we're talking about faster, I'm not talking about in 10 days become 9 days. By automating how data from drone surveys is connected with rule-driven model creation in Revit, Build Change's workflow for retrofit design went almost a week to under 3 hours. From a week to under 3 hours. And Build Change's focus on automating its retrofit process is making life better in some of the world's most at-risk communities. And the technology that they're using is helping them to improve lives. Just like the technology we're using is allowing us to partner with organizations in India like KEF, where they've built 198 canteens, 27 kitchens in about 45 days. Something that it could not do in traditional methods of construction and design. So automation might be changing how we work, but it's also changing the problems that we can work on. So automation, my friends, yes, it is changing jobs, but it can also fundamentally change lives. So let's just quickly summarize. So we talked about automation and the things that are changing when Wilman. Their concept for modular construction just wouldn't be effective without making houses in ways that are more industrialized. So using prefab components manufactured to be modular so that they can be completely assembled on site, increasing efficiency, lowering costs, and helping them impact lives in a really positive way. Automation is changing the very things that Van Wielen makes. Their concept on modular construction wouldn't be effective, as I mentioned earlier on. But they're built on repeatability and flexibility. They've converged the repeatability of manufacturing and the flexibility of construction. And it's because of this process that this concept is fully digital, it's changed the nature of work at Van Wielen. It's fundamentally changed the nature of work. They've embraced digital, they've embraced new processes. So where human innovation now is thriving because of a new partnership with automation. What about GM? So the things that GM are making are also changing because of automation. So their next generation of vehicles rely on light-weighted parts, as you know. That just wouldn't be possible without making them in entirely new ways. Generative design and industrial additive converges how things are designed and made, something that could never happen before. And in doing so, changes the very nature of the things that GM are now capable of making in ways they never thought before. It actually also fundamentally changes the nature of work, too. So for over 100 years, automation has helped the car industry focus on optimization. But that's not good enough in a world that's being disrupted by technology. But a new relationship with automation today is helping the industry focus on one key major imperative, and that's innovation. So as you think about what automation means for you and your work, think of automation as more than just a way to improve your bottom line, because it can also help you grow your top line in very powerful ways. Automating tasks and optimizing processes are a key part of staying competitive, whether optimizing for efficiency or for density. Optimization is what we all do to keep up with our competitors. But is that good enough? Is that going to propel us to the future? One thing we must remember, it's not, because it's imagination and not optimization that moves all of us ahead. Whether imagining how a bracket could be printed as one part rather than assembled from many components, or imagining how to accommodate the human needs along with the business needs of housing. Whatever you say, automation can take us further. And just imagine how much further we can do when we partner our human innovation with automation. When you bring human ingenuity, you bring automation together, imagine the world we can create. And there are great examples in India, like KEF I mentioned just now, like the first Hyperloop getting built in India, the first robotics company going global in India. All great examples of how human ingenuity and automation can yield net incredible positive results for the country. We've seen how far innovation with generative design has taken your work in the 7 years we've been working on it. It's been 7 years. We've seen how it's not just what you design and make, but how you design and make. So what are we going to do? And we know that you're not all going to retool around additive, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of investment. So we're working on how we can help you explore how any design can be made across the full manufacturing spectrum, from milling to molding, from casting to composites, all from the same design space. We want you to manage a portfolio of viable options rather than learn a portfolio of viable features. Our vision is to enable you to explore the full solution space and have a clear line of sight from part to production. So as we change how you design by converging one solution from many potential options and guiding the tool to any manufacturing method, we also recognize that we change how you learn. That's going to be something that needs to evolve as well. So we're also thinking about how tools for design through co-creation can also foster learning through co-creation. So that's a piece of work that we're working on right now. We're looking at how our tools can adapt to us and help us adapt. So learning tools built on automation, like generative design, to anticipate our needs. And we're helping to think, and we're thinking about it in an automated fashion, but we're also making sure that as we think about the future, we want to enable the future leaders of the world across the different academic schools and engineers with new skills. And that's why you're going to hear an announcement that we're going to be making in partnership with NASSCOM and Baba Ambedkar Technology University on what we're doing to redefine the landscape for the future. Very exciting stuff, something I think groundbreaking that India is doing. It sets itself apart from the rest of the world. So working in partnership with tools that foster co-creation can help and nurture innovation. Together we can balance the inevitability of more with the reality of less to find the opportunity of better. Better things, a better work, and more importantly, a better world. Something that we are all responsible for as we innovate to create a new world and a new future and a technology-driven world. So through human innovation and automation, we can actually shape the world around us in incredibly profound ways. India is on a chart and on a path of massive growth. I'm incredibly proud of what we see, what's happening here. I'm incredibly proud of the work that this community has done. We're continuing to build a future, a very different future. And we're looking forward to partnering with all of you across different facets of life to basically create a much brighter future where we can reach out and we can deliver on the more that's coming. We can turn around and make sure that we do it with less negative impact. We can turn around and make sure that we harness the opportunity of doing things better. Because together, we can create and we can make anything. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your day, and thank you very much for being here today.